Theme parks for many can offer a very nice and enjoyable day out. However, when you get creeps at the park, or the idiots who don't follow park rules, things can become horrific quite quickly. So get comfortable and let the darkness take control. Number 1. I worked at Raging Waters in San Dimas, California for a few summers during high school. It was a great job, walking distance from my house, and I got to work on my tan. Anyway, this was the summer of 1987. I was just around 17 and I was on lifeguard duty at the top of the Dropout. Dropout was our huge slide that went up around 70 or so feet and slid straight down. No twists or turns, just straight down into a shallow slip of water. I'm doing my thing, telling people to lie down and cross their arms across their chest, and I would gently nudge them over the edge. It didn't take much for me to slide them over. Literally a slight tug was all it took. Mid-shift, out of nowhere, a group of 20-something-year-olds get into the front of the line. Around 4 guys and maybe a girl too. The one alpha guy of the pack tells me, "Hey, let me slide off myself." And before I could say anything, and I was told by the lawyers that witnesses heard me yell at him to get down, he hoists himself up on top of the horizontal platform of the slide, where one is supposed to lay down, so I can see them slide, and takes a running hop over the ledge. I think he was trying to do a cannonball and land with his back against the slide. At least that's my theory. Like they say, when something bad happens, everything was in slow motion. The guy gets a lot of air. I don't think he realized that the drop was almost 90 degrees down. In midair, he tried to self-correct his jump, his arms and legs wildly trying to feel for anything to grab onto, but it never happens. Thinking about this as I say it, it's sort of like Wile E. Coyote when he runs off a cliff and for a split second or two, he hangs there in midair, realizing that he's screwed. Somehow he free falls between both slides, as Dropout has 2 identical slides about 2 feet apart, and hit every iron crossbar that held the 7-story deck. The guy falls about 70 feet, hitting pretty much every steel girder on the way down. He lands at the base of the slide, with just about every bone in his body broken, compound fractures everywhere. He ended up in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, and settled for about 1/10 of what he tried to sue us for. Yup, that arsehole tried to sue the park, and me. Luckily there were dozens of witnesses who saw and heard me yelling at the guy to get off the slide. I was also told by management that this guy was absolutely loaded. Either way, I still feel sorry for that poor arsehole. Number 2. Around 10 years ago, a few of my friends decided to go to Cedar Point. Everything was fine, right up until riding the power tower. We all sat down in the seats and everything seemed fine. I used to live near Gauga Lake in the 90s, so I rode these types of rides often. I sit down and start speaking with my friends, and push down the hydraulic metal restraint thing. Everything seemed fine, and we started moving in the air. About halfway up, I noticed that the hydraulic metal restraint never locked, and halfway up in the air, my friends noticed that the seatbelt could easily become unattached. We all start screaming, but this being a ride, the operator either doesn't hear us or doesn't care, because everyone screams on rides. I came to realize that I could die, and did the only thing I could in this situation. I put all my strength in holding the bars to my chest whilst the ride is dropping to the ground, which wasn't too bad until the ride shot you back up into the air. I was dangerously close to not being able to hold on anymore, but I managed and the ride ended. After the ride stopped, I couldn't move, and my friend said I was completely white-faced. Then I noticed blood dripping from my hands. I was squeezing my hands so tightly that my fingernails dug into my skin. And 10 years later, I'm still shaking just saying this. Sadly, I've not been back there since. It's actually not the first time something scary like that has happened to me. It's just the worst one. The other one happened when I was much younger and involved Geauga Lake. Not exactly a ride, but a swimming pool type thing called the Wave. They removed or changed it because people were getting hurt and almost drowning left, right and centre. The problem was that they allowed inner tubes, and on a busy day it would be nothing but rafts. The old design was one huge wave that came every 5 to 10 minutes, so you would likely be pushed underwater. And if there would be too many rafts in your general area, it could be very hard for you to come up and breathe again. If you're a kid trying to push a 300-pound person off a raft, it's almost impossible. The combination of these things happening to me have made theme parks perpetually unappealing. Number 3. I spent the first 10 years of my life in the city of San Jose, California. When my mother could afford it, she would take me to a theme park in the neighboring town of Sunnyvale called Great America. We went there around once or twice a year. The rides were fun, the food was good, and I wasn't paying, so I had a good time whenever we went. Except once when I was around the age of 7. About an hour or two into the day, I got that feeling. You know the one. When you get the sneaking suspicion that someone you can't see is watching your every move. I mentioned it to my mum, and she said that I was imagining things. We went on about our day and it was fun as usual, but I couldn't shake that feeling. All day it got steadily worse until I was literally begging my mum to take me home. And eventually she obliged, but couldn't figure out what had gotten into me. Now a little backstory. My parents got divorced when I was only a baby. When I was around 11, they reconnected and decided to get back together. Now a little backstory. My parents got divorced when I was only a baby, but when I was about 11, they reconnected and decided to get back together. And so we moved into a shitty little town called Eureka. My dad's father, who I refused to call my grandfather, lived in the same town. I would never speak to anyone, not even my father. He was in every sense of the word a recluse, and he passed away not long after we moved. And my father, being his next of kin, was tasked with going through all his things. The first word that came to mind when we entered the house was paranoid. There was at least one rifle in every room of the house, sometimes 2 or 3. There was a Colt .45 under his pillow, and another under the driver's seat of his car, and a snub-nosed .38 with a Ziploc bag in the back part of the toilet. Cameras were mounted on every exterior wall, and boxes upon opening, full of VHS tapes that collected recordings from these cameras, some of which were nearly worn out from repeated viewings. Suddenly, from the master bedroom, I hear my mum yell. My mum rarely swore in front of me, so I knew something was seriously wrong, and what I saw in my mum's hands shocked me to the core. It was a photo of me and my mother at the theme park. I was around 7, walking along with a corn dog in one hand and drink in the other, and I had a suspicious look on my face. I instantly remembered that day. My mother said that she felt faint and left the room. As it turns out, there were 30 pictures of us from that day, as well as some from other times and other places. Some of them were taken from within arm's reach. I'd never felt more creeped out in my life, and I haven't since. I don't know why he was spying on us, and I'm not sure that I want to. Number 4. This story has stuck with me for a long time. I was on break. The park was hot, around 94 degrees with the humidity squeezing my neck. The park was packed, with walking room no better than rush hour traffic. My friend was the park medic who had only been working there for about 4 months. Her name was Shelley. Whilst we were talking, an alarm came in over the radio, stating that a guest had passed out next to her child. She immediately left our conversation and took off running. Next time I saw her, she was clocking out, and she was walking to her car crying. I asked her what was wrong, and she let the waterworks go. She looked up and told me what really happened. An old lady came to the park with her granddaughter. The grandmother was waiting on a bench whilst her granddaughter played in the splash zone. The grandmother collapsed, and the granddaughter runs over just as the woman starts bleeding from her eyes, nose and mouth. Shelley is there moments later, and the managers were by her side in a panic. Shelley immediately starts trying to check her vitals as the girl grabs her arm and begs her not to let her grandma die. The grandmother died shortly after, and Shelley quit that same day. Number 5. Okay, I know there are only 4 stories mentioned in the title, but this one really stuck with me, and even though it's not scary, I think you might like it anyway. I was working in Disneyland and dressed up as Minnie Mouse. During one of my first few weeks, I was working at Chef Mickey's one morning. I'm doing the rotation and see a family with a girl who was really sick. Her family were feeding her using a G-tube. She was in a wheelchair and didn't respond to much. She was fussy, so I indicated to the family that I'd pass their table then come back to them. About 10 minutes later, my attendant comes up to me and says that Princess so-and-so would like to see you now. So I go over to the family, and the mother told me that Minnie Mouse was the girl's favourite character, and asked if we could take some pictures with her. Of course. So the older brother, a teenager, is filming all of this, and I'm in character with the girl, and the girl smiles. The mother starts bawling and the dad starts crying too. Once I take a few pictures with the girl, I go to hug the mum, who hugged me back very tightly and said, "The doctor said she couldn't smile anymore. Thank you." Then I went to hug the dad, and he hugged me back so tightly and said, "Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to us." There's a difference when the person is talking to the character and when they're talking to you. The dad was talking to me. So I go back on rotation, cursing that I can't wipe the tear out of my eye. The next day I go to work, and the check-in person says, "Do you know where the manager's office is? They want to talk to you." My first thought was, oh shit, what did I do? I go to the manager's office, and he closes the door behind me. "You were Minnie at Chef Mickey's yesterday for breakfast, right?" "Yes," I reply. "Did you meet a Give Kids the World family?" "Yeah," I reply. "Give Kids called us yesterday afternoon. They wanted to make sure you were personally thanked with a note on your record." "Why?" "The girl had an inoperable brain tumour. It was affecting a lot of her motor function, and her family's wish for her was to meet Minnie Mouse. Yesterday afternoon, whilst they were in the park, they noticed she was getting sleepy, so they went back to their room so that she could take a nap. I'm sorry to tell you this, but she never woke up. She held on long enough just to meet Minnie, and you made that happen." I was offered to speak to a grief counsellor but declined. It's really heavy to know that a child was so close to death, and that they hung on just to meet their favourite character. And to know that you were the reason they felt that they could depart. So yeah, whenever I was having a bad day at work, I would think about this girl and her family, and say to myself, this is why you do this, because of people like her. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's video. The last story was sad, But even though theme parks can be dangerous and have creepy people lurking, they still bring a lot of joy and happiness to many. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe, as you won't want to miss what I have in store for you next. And if you have had a creepy or paranormal experience that you wish to share, feel free to send it to my email, which you can find in the description. Feel free to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, @TheMortisMedia. But anyway, for now guys, I'm gonna sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.